Welcome to the Money Made Human podcast. It celebrates at its heart the work of credit unions and their vital role in enriching our lives and communities. Brought to you by First Class Credit Union, each episode features insightful discussions revealing the meaningful impact that can be made through economic collaboration. Mostly, it's a collection of compassionate conversations about navigating life and the individual journeys we take. Welcome to Money Made Human, a podcast by First Class Credit Union. We're delighted today to be joined by Ian Lavery, MP for Blyth and Ashington. Ian, I have to say, first of all, I love your accent. I think the Scottish have a special affinity for those from the northeast of the country. So I love that, first of all.
Well, can I tell you, Gayle, my accent is quite distinct from most even northeast accent. It's a pit dialect. It's from the pits. It's from and where I live and lived all my life in Ashington was biggest coal mining area in Europe, biggest coal mining town in Europe. People had different accents in different pit villages. Like less than like a mile apart, sort of thing. And it's a Northumbrian, like Brugge type accent, rather than a Newcastle Tyneside accent. And it's renowned across the world, really. People, when I've been on holiday, people say, "Oh, you're Norwegian. Nice to meet you." No, I'm not Norwegian. I'm like, and if you say I'm from Ashington, either say, or the Charlton brothers, that's where they live. Or you've got to basically say you're from Newcastle.
Sure.
It is fairly distinct.
It's so nice and friendly and kind sounding, so I know we love it. Ian, I've got so many questions for you, really about how the trade union and credit union movements are important for society. I would love to talk to you a bit about politics. It's been a busy week in Westminster. And also, I'd like to go back to the past and find out a bit more about you. And obviously you mentioned mining, and that's been a big part of your life as well. I have a grandfather that was a miner, so I appreciate all the work that you've done for the National Union of Mineworkers. But let me come back to that. What was it like growing up, Ian? What did it look like for you growing up, and how did that childhood inform your values?
Well, it depends, what you mean by what age growing up. When I was a young lad, a boy, little boy.
Yeah.
We lived in an upstairs flat, 2-bedroom upstairs flat, with my mum, my dad, and 3 of my brothers, because the youngest one wasn't born then. So you can imagine what sort of conditions there were. And we grew up in poverty. Mm-hmm. And I look, but you didn't realise, that you're living in poverty till years and years and years ahead. And you look back, and I look back at my time very fondly. Mm-hmm. My mum didn't work officially. My mum did leaflets, and she did what she could because she had to look after the family. And my dad worked at the pit. So we grew up in great poverty, to be honest with you. But as I say, there was 3 was in one double bed, one in the single bed, and then my mum and dad were in the other room. Well, we lived then we moved on to probably what would be classed as one of the most deprived states in the northeast, if not the country. And we lived there. My younger brother was born, so there was 5 of us, 5 lads, my mum and my dad. And the one thing is, Gayle, honestly, is that poverty's awful, really is. But when everybody is around you is in poverty, you don't really realise it.
Sure.
If everybody's gotten out, they've gotten out. But obviously, you look at other places when you're growing up. You look at other people at school, and there was a realisation that other people had money, you know. But one thing, my mum and my dad were absolutely wonderful people, very loving people. They loved with her, protected with her, looked after her. We had to have a bath every single day. My mum used to stick her head under the tap and very roughly make sure that we were clean. So every day, every night, we went to bed all very clean and smart for school the next day. We had a loving family, and it's really fun. We look. My older brother died 2 years ago. But me and my other brothers, we look back at it very fondly. You know, have some great laughs.
Was that your first experience in thinking about money and financials, or did that come later when you reflect back on it and you said, you know, you didn't have anything? Did that just come later, that reflection, rather than at the time?
It came much later.
Yeah.
Got to be honest, come much later. I think it's when you get into your teens, when you want the new trainers.
Sure.
Or you want the new football boots, or you want the latest football strip. Because that's the only things that you're really bothered about when you just come into your teens. You want to be, you know, one of the lads or one of the lads. You know, you want to be up there with the A team sort of thing. You begin to realise then that, despite the fact that your mum and dad are doing their very, very best, anywhere they can buy 5 lads a pair of Nike trainers.
Sure.
And it wasn't Nike at the time. Nike probably hadn't been heard of at the time. But anyway, your mum and dad could afford to buy everybody the best. And,
of course.
And we, you know, as a family, we used to get hand-downs, you know, because we're like, my oldest brother then would pass his clothes on to the next one. He used to get, you know, all the way down the tree until there was no left. And it's not until you realise that, because when you were young, you know, you didn't realise that you're wearing the cheapest clothes. You didn't realise that other people have spent like a fortune on their type of denim jeans. So it's like when you get in your teens, and it's when you're like beginning to make your way in the world. You're looking around and seeing what other people have got and wondering, I wonder how they manage that. And but you know, a very low intensity at that age, but when you get older and older and older, you know, when you're looking for your first girlfriend, or you know, wanting to be one of the lads, you start to like want things that you see other people have got, and realisation that you really cannot, because of the fact that your mum and dad's got 5 laddies. It all, you know, it's very, very difficult.
I don't know if you also had a reflection. I don't know if your parents are still around at all.
No, they're both dead now.
In terms of, you do look back, don't you, and think, my goodness, those parents did a really good job with what they had as well.
Of course, honestly, I mean, my mother died when she was only 53. And again, me and my brothers would talk about this. We honestly believe it's the stress. The fact that my mother wanted everything she possibly could for us. You know, she loved us, she protected us, she looked after us. She put food on the table. She went to work during the day and at night time. As I said before, probably not in the industries where you or like legal, or they weren't illegal, but she was delivering leaflets. She was doing anything she could to make that extra few quid, not for herself, by the way, but for the lads.
For you.
The lads. Yeah. And again, when you look back, my mother was a really fantastic person. She used to write poetry. She played the piano. You know, like lots of people of my age at that time, that their parents couldn't do anything like that, you know. But they honestly believe that as a consequence of having to look after 5 lads and my father, nobody used to help her make sure there was food on the table. Nobody used to help her to make sure that the electricity bills or the rent was paid, and probably my father was lacking in that sort of thing as well, and I just think that she must have had a terribly stressful life. Loved us to bits, but I do honestly believe that it at least contributed to the fact that she died young. This is a consequence of poverty.
Yeah, I was going to ask, were your family impacted by the miners' strikes in the early 80s?
Massively.
Yeah.
Massively. And again, Gayle, that was something which we often reflect on, because during the miners' strike, that time there was myself, my dad, two of my brothers on strike.
Is that
we used to get picketing in the morning. We used to get all sorts. Well, I did in particular, getting all sorts of trouble. We used to come back later, like early or whatever time, and expect that there'd be a meal on the table. Expect that the electricity had been paid, the rent had been paid, and it was all down to me mum, because we didn't get any strike pay during the miners' strike. We're fighting for the jobs of our children, for the future, the communities of the future. Didn't get any strike pay, so it was really, really difficult. There wasn't really any money coming in for more than a year, and I think that again, that was a huge contribution to why my mum died so young.
Mm-hmm. Was that an influence to you in terms of what you went on to do?
My mum was, her rule, what I would like it or dislike it, her rule was looking after us. Mm-hmm. Totally committed to our bands, to our wins. My father, who worked at the pit, he was a big, strong, powerful man, a good worker, good grafter. He had a lot of respect in the local community. He had a lot of respect in the mining industry, in the pit at the time. He was a big labour man. When I say a big labour man, he would never he probably wouldn't have got any labour meetings, but he was solid labour. Mm-hmm. And a solid trade unionist, solid member of the NUM. And if there was any difficulties at meetings, he might be there and people would listen to what he had to say. So I always listened to what my father had to say with regard to, when I become of working age, you start to listen to what your father was saying. And to be honest, he was never far from the mark.
Mm-hmm. Was he an inspiration to you in terms of your future career?
You know what? One of the biggest and best pieces of advice I've ever had in my life was from me dad. And that was when the miners' strike first started, very early days, like Thursday, I was an indentured apprentice. And the National Union of Mineworkers said categorically, it was a decision made at national level that apprentices should go to work.
Yeah.
And we sat at the table, my mother, my father, my brothers, and I said, look, I've been told by the union it's okay. You can go to work, you're an indentured apprentice, so the union's got no objection. And I said to my father, well, should I be doing that? Should I be bringing some money in for the family? And he says, definitely not. He says, you never, ever, ever cross a picket line. He says, I'm going to tell you something, and he says, whether the union agreed to it or not, if you went to work during the strike for the rest of your life, you'll be telling people that you went to work. But the union said it was okay. He says, if you've got to try and explain yourself, you've got to understand that it's not the right thing. He says, do what you want. He says, but my advice is definitely do not cross the picket line under any circumstances. And I says, that's good enough for me. So I didn't get to work, obviously, and then the strike took place. And again, we'll look back at we've got some fantastic memories of the time during the miners' strike we had. As well, fantastic memories.
It was a difficult time for the country because it wasn't just the miners that were out on strike. It forced striking in other industries like British Steel. The steel workers were on strike as well because they didn't have the coal for the furnaces and so on. It was a really difficult time for the whole country at that point.
It was a difficult time. There wasn't many people, to be honest, we didn't get we got great verbal support.
Yeah.
And we got plenty of, the union got plenty of financial support. However, the support on the ground was very thin. That was like the train drivers, the train operators, the railway workers, a lot of the people in the Transport and General Workers Union. And there was lots of solidarity action, but it wasn't on a massive scale. So we were basically on strike on our own. Apart from that great support, we have great support from international supporters. We had great support from national and from regional, and the solidarity expressed. Should I tell you just something which I really, again, I'll not forget? The South African miners who were very lowly paid and very much abused in the workplace, they sent a check to the National Union of Mineworkers, but the miners themselves, who basically were living in tin huts, they had clubbed together and they sent a check to the National Union of Mineworkers, and the money, the worth of the check wasn't that great at all. But the solidarity and the thought of these people who live in the most abject conditions, who work in desperate environment, who are being abused by the employer, thought they would club together and give the British miners what they could. They had nothing. They had less than nothing. It was just absolutely iconic. And that check was framed and was on the wall in the National Union of Mineworkers for a long time. And I'll never forget that. And I've been to South Africa a few times and I've met the miners, and it was just a great act of solidarity. And at the Christmas time during the strike, there was juggernauts after juggernauts of toys from the CGT in France. They made a pledge, that not one miner's child would go without a present at Christmas. So they had these Barbie dolls and footballs, and they basically pulled the juggernauts up in different towns and villages, right? And you had a queue, and we had to try and get the footballs because we were the boys, sort of thing, and the lasses wanted the Barbie dolls. But quite often, one would run out, so you'd see a lot of little lads in the community wandering with the Barbie dolls, wishing they had been in the queue in front to get a football. But it was, again, a great memory of the miners' strike. The best Christmas, one of the best Christmases in my lifetime, because what we did. And I was just a young lad then, I was only 21. We made sure that all the kids had a fantastic time. And they probably had more during the miners' strike Christmas than they've had before. Not in terms of presents, in terms of love and affection and care. It was great, man.
I love that. And you went on, Ian, to work for the National Union of Mineworkers. How did that progress?
Well, it progressed from the miners' strike because I was very active during the miners' strike. I got arrested a number of times during the miners' strike, and I got locked up a lot of times during the miners' strike. I wasn't an angel before the strike, and I certainly wasn't an angel during. And to be honest, I'm not an angel now, but I've never been in trouble with the police, either before or after the strike. The only time I've ever been in trouble with the police is during the miners' strike, and sure. I make no apologies for that. But after the miners' strike, basically it started in the social club after an annual local meeting. The couple of the local officials were there and says, Ian, we would love you to your name to be on the committee. I said, I'm not sure what that, but I did. And I got elected on, because you get elected on where I work, there was 2,500 people work at the pit. And then I got elected to be the compensation secretary. Compensation secretary used to look after people who had injuries, to look after families who maybe had lost a loved one. The compensation secretary was a person who would speak to the families, speak to the lawyers, get the information, pull things together, and try and get the maximum compensation for anybody. And that was my. I loved that role. It was very, very very, very difficult and dark at times. But that was one of the first things. And then I became a regional and Northumberland official. Again, elected. All my positions, I've been elected in every one. So you've got to have that track record. And mine has different vote for people who haven't got the utmost of respect for. And then I became was elected onto the National Executive Committee of the NUM, and I mean that was just unreal. My first meeting, I went into Sheffield, right? My name card there, Lavery. It was next to Dennis Skinner.
Wow.
Dennis Skinner had been a hero of mine from the strike, a labour and trade union hero. And here's me, Lavery, from like the roughest place in Ashington, one of the roughest places in in England. And I'm sitting next to Dennis Skinner. What
did your dad think about that?
He was just proud. Absolutely thought it was brilliant. He used to give us plenty of advice. And he used to bollock us, to be honest. Because I was still like young at the time. I had like a sleeper earring in. Refused to wear a suit.
Okay.
And my father was an old miner. When I used to go to the club, he had a shirt and tie. And his hair was immaculate. And he said to me, he says, "You're going to have to book your ideas up. You need to smarten yourself up." He says, "You might not, you might be thinking about yourself, but what about other people? You're representing other people. You've got to get your act together, and you've got to dress right, dress properly." And then I did a television, probably one of the first television interviews I ever did. I was so proud of myself. And my uncle who worked at the pit said, "Ian, you had chewing gum in your mouth when you did that interview." He says, "Never ever do that again." I'm telling you, and he really, really
got stuck into you.
I mean, that when you think about it now, they're the people who shape your life.
Sure.
They carved your character.
Can I ask you a question about the miners' strike, which has just occurred to me? A dear friend of First Class Credit Union is Hugh Gaffney, who was a former MP, but he's just written a book about a local mining disaster, Auchengate, which happened a few miles away from here. Was the basis of the strike for more pay, was that linked to the dangers of the job?
Well, can I just say to it, Gayle, I know Hugh Gaffney very well, and a great lad, a Percy. Hugh was a Percy.
Yes, of course.
And he sent us a copy of his book, a signed copy of his book.
Yes.
I haven't read it yet, but what's more important than that, I've actually spoke at the Auchengate Memorial on 2 occasions.
Sure.
At Auchengate Miners' Welfare. That's the big, the memorial garden. So I've been there on more than one occasion. So that's another thing. So Hugh sent us a copy of his book.
Nice.
I've just texted. The miners' strike. The miners' strike was about. It wasn't pit closures because the mines, the pits, these were the centre of the economy, not the centre of the economy, they were the economy.
Yeah.
And hundreds of pit villages up and down to Scotland, Wales, England, Scotland. And the pits were the things, that's why the villages were there, because of the pits, because of the fuel. And that's why there was local shops, and that's why there was leisure centres or libraries. Shouldn't forget, it was the miners themselves many, many years ago when the pits were opening. The miners who weren't on great wages, they paid money from the backside pocket for the libraries in the towns, for the leisures, for the swimming pools. But all of these, and they've got a rich traditions and cultures which come across the border. Whippet racing, pigeon racing, leek growing, flower growing, onions grown, all of this. The painting, the groups. What a brilliant, fantastic culture that the miners right across the UK actually had. The union wanted to prevent closures because of an ideology of the Conservative government. We wanted to make sure it wasn't about wages, terms and conditions.
Okay.
1984-85 dispute was solely about pit closures. Previous disputes, Gayle, had been about low wages, reduction of wages, different types of proposals on wages. But the big strike was purely about saving the communities which we live.
And I guess on that point about community, it's why trade unions and credit unions are really important, because of the onward impact we can make to a community as well. What would your views, Ian, on the importance of credit unions alongside trade unions for communities?
The credit unions play an ever increasingly huge role in areas like where I live and the former mining communities, A lot of places where there's a lot of deprivation, a lot of places where people just need a little bit of a boost. Sure. They're in a financial position where they might be just keeping their head above water, but anything extra they cannot manage. And they couldn't get a loan. Get plenty of loans off the local loan sharks, the local gangsters, the local mafia. Plenty of them at despicable rates. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people driven towards him. The fact that the credit unions and in different areas means that people who couldn't and possibly wouldn't get any financial assistance from elsewhere have the opportunity. So the idea, and the thinking of behind the credit unions is first class.
Mm-hmm. No, we totally agree, and we don't want anyone to go to loan sharks. It's such a dangerous pathway. And for you, Ian, you moved from the National Union of Mineworkers into politics and became an MP. How long have you been a serving MP for now?
Well, the move, I was a politician. I was the president of the National Union of Mineworkers, which was the top job. I took over a job from Arthur Scargill when Arthur retired in 2000.
What was he like in person?
Very difficult.
Was he?
Very difficult, but probably the best negotiator I've ever seen. I've known some very, very intelligent man, no compromise whatsoever. But a very, very, very intelligent man, and he had a great vision for the future. I think I'd like to think that I learned a lot of things from Arthur. But I would like to think that a lot of the things that I could have learned, I shoved aside.
Sure.
Tremendous individual. So when he retired, I became the president of the union, and then in 2010, the MP's job came up in Wadsbeck, and that covered the area where I live. I was never looking to be an MP. I didn't have my heart. You know what? If you have a look at the MPs I'm in the Commons now. If you have a look at the MPs in here now, the vast majority have wanted to be an MP since they were 3. I wanted to be an ice cream man when I was 3. That's what my vocation in life was. That was my ambition, to be my vocation in life, to sell these 99s with lovely flakes and monkeys. And look where I am now. And people might say you should have been an ice cream man. You never mind where with that.
And how long have you been in the Commons for?
I was elected in the 2010 election, so I've been in nearly 16 years.
Wow.
16 years now.
Does the role that your mum and dad and how they influenced you, does that stay with you in the Commons? You know, do you feel their values and do you use them day to day?
You could ask most people, most fair-minded people in the Commons about Ian Lavery, and I would hope they would say, I am a bit of a beast, I've got to admit it, politically.
Are you?
But in terms of socially, I would expect, if people were fair, they would say very courteous, a gentleman. I'm always, very respectful of other people, regardless of what side of unless you get embroiled into the political debate. That's different. But generally, socially, I would hope that I've got all the traits of my father and all the loving parts of my mother. So either have they've guided me. Obviously, I'm part of them, and I was very proud of him because my father was always a really nice bloke. Man, anybody crossed him, and then it was like, that was hell to pay.
Sure.
Just a lovely bloke, and I think both people would say that about us, and I would want people to say that about us.
Mm-hmm. Ian, at the time of recording this, it's been a really busy week in Westminster, and we saw the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, resign yesterday. And I guess I wanted to ask you a couple of different questions that you might not expect, but on a human level, it can seem quite brutal from the outside. And I guess the second question I wanted to ask is, can any Prime Minister resolve the issues in the country? It almost feels like the mentality of football managers, that do they get enough time to govern before the next one comes in? Because we've had quite a lot of Prime Ministers over the last few years. What's your take on it all? And is it difficult on a human level?
You asked two very, very important questions. Politics is a brutal business. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Looking at Keir Starmer, and I know Keir Starmer. I was on the Shadow Cabinet, was Keir for 4 years. I was the chair of the Labour Party when Keir was the Shadow Minister for Brexit. So I know Keir Starmer, and he was a decent sort of bloke.
Yeah.
Not a politician. And when Keir was elected, he was brutal. We had 650,000 members when I was chair, nearly 650,000 members. Now we've got, like, under Keir's stewardship, under 200,000.
Okay.
So you can see, and we've had lots of people who have worked for the Labour Party, lots of councillors, lots of activists who were brutally kicked into the Labour Party, expelled by a coup from Starmer's Labour Together project. I've seen lots of people in tears have given their life to the Labour Party and were kicked out for very, very, very minor incidents. In my case, in my constituency, somebody who wrote an article for Millen in 1975 was expelled from the Labour Party after all that year's membership. And somebody else who had a cake with Socialist Appeal on, which is a publication, and he was on a photograph, taking out the party, being a member, an activist. So, it is brutal. It really is brutal, but you've got to, if you're dishing that sort of brutality out, you shouldn't really cry when it kicks you back and kicks you at the bum, really.
And what about the point about, it feels a bit like football managers? Do they get enough time to govern?
Well, the fact is, right, we've just had 14 years of austerity. 14 years. The country is destroyed, right? Whether you look at education, whether you look at defence, whether you look at employment rights, whether you look at the workplace, whether you look at the NHS, whether you look at the court system, all of these have a huge bearing on the cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
Now, it's really, really unfair, but it's the way it is, that you would expect a Labour government to come in the 14 years of absolutely destroying the country and all of these things that I've just mentioned. And then expecting the Prime Minister, and it was Keir Starmer, to be able to change things within the first year or so. It is brutal. And if he is a Prime Minister, like Keir did, he says, I'll need 10 years to sort this out. That's not what people wanted to hear. People had been suffering for 14 years. They wanted to be able to afford to put food on the table, afford to put the heating on, afford to put the electricity on. And maybe have a little few quid to look after their kids. And unfortunately, the Labour Party, Keir's premiership, understood the difficulties but didn't address them. It didn't deliver. And there's things it could have done in the first 6 months, but what they did do was withdraw the winter fuel allowance. And that was like taking money away from pensioners, and that sent the wrong message. And from that day, it was a downward spiral for the Labour Party. So my answer really is, I cannot believe that under the present system, there'll ever be a situation where a Prime Minister can come in after the likes of 14 years and change it in a very short space of time. But you can't change lots of things. You know what? Put a smile on people's face, man. Make people feel happy. Make people feel valued. Welcome people. Smile at people. Give them some hope. Give them opportunities, ambition. That's free. Give them respect. That's free. Didn't do that, I'm afraid.
Do you have someone that you hope goes into that role? I don't know if I'm allowed to ask that or not, but do you have a favourite for that role?
The PM's role. I'm like, I like a bet. Right? I like a bet. And before I have a flutter, I normally have a look at the runners and the riders.
Sure.
Look at the form. See what the horse or the dog or greyhound might have done in the past. Weigh up, so you've got a bit of an idea what they expect and why you think you should be supporting them.
Yep.
And I'll just translate that to whoever might put up. It looks like it's going to be a coronation. Looks like Andy Burnham will be coronated probably as we sit here now. Things could change very quickly. It looks like he could be Prime Minister way before the end of July, you know. But I'll keep me counsel on it, because I think it's important to wait and see who might be putting up, and then you make a decision. Then you've got a bit of a bargaining tool as well. You can say to them, look, I'll support you if. Can you give us this guarantee? If. And can you make sure that you're going to be looking after the trade unions? If. And then I would make my mind up. But it looks like it's going to be Andy Burnham, and it looks like he's going to be the only candidate. Now, welcome, Andy, and I think he will be a much, much better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer ever was.
Mm-hmm. It's a tough business. Just before I bring our team in from our HQ, what's your hopes for the future for the Labour Party over the short term? Do you have anything that you're hoping will change?
Well, you know the way I've described it, Gayle. I've described it to lots of people. There've been lots of meetings on it, I'm sure you'll understand. I've described the situation as a bit of a life raft. It would be for the party, because I think the party's it's fatally wounded. Mm-hmm. We've got this life raft, and we can scramble onto the life raft, or we can drown, we can sink. I think we've all agreed that we should be onto this life raft. The life raft should then be onto a safe vessel, so we're all safe and stable, and then that safe vessel should sail away from the rocks and onto dry land. And then we're safe and we can look to the future and say this is what we need to be doing for a much better society than what we've had in the past. But we're just on the life raft at this moment in time. Mm-hmm. So we've got to continue the campaign, continue to fight, and hopefully, because I thought, and I'm saying we're fairly wounded, I thought there was a possibility of the Labour Party in the next election, possibly lying.
It's hard to fathom.
Does that make any sense? You know what I'm on?
Yeah, no, totally. It's hard to fathom. I'm just going to invite back our headquarters, and we've got some quick fire questions for you.
Hello, Ian. It's been lovely to hear in the background you talk about your family and all that stuff. So we've got 5 questions from the team, and they're just personal questions, some fun questions. So the first one we have is, what is the best career advice you've ever received?
Career advice I ever received was didn't cross a picket line.
Oh, I think I got that as well as a kid.
A question we've got here is, what is something that people would be surprised to learn about you?
Well, that would be telling us lots of things, that I could tell you that nobody else knows. It's a really difficult question, that. Quite often, people do know who I am and what I stand for. I haven't got that many secrets seriously. I'm not too sure what people would be surprised to hear. Maybe that I'm a big softie. Maybe that I'm really a big softie at heart. Very compassionate. I love animals. I love wildlife and things like that. People live in that side of us. I'm sure people are very much aware of it. I love birds.
Oh,
Flying type, right? The flying. I love birds. I love twitting sort of thing. So I think that would be something anyway.
Oh, that's lovely.
And the next question we have is, what are you listening, watching, or reading right now that you would recommend?
I'm reading at this moment in time, just in the book, The 3 Revolutions on Cuba, China, and Russia.
Wow.
I'm reading that at this moment in time. What am I watching? I like watching documentaries, but I love watching. I do relax, because if I haven't relaxed and watch them and keep your mind occupied, I cannot settle. So my wife gets mad with us because I've got to if I'm sitting down, I've got to put something on and watch it. So I like the documentaries on Netflix. I like the history things, but also I love comedy. I love laughing. And I love to see people laugh. I don't know if you've ever been to Blackpool, but there was a thing at Blackpool at the fairground. There was this clown in this big, tube thing.
Container?
And you used to put your money in and it just used to laugh. I used to spend all my money just standing there. Just stand laughing. So I love laughing. I love comedy. And I like a good, binge on Netflix sort of thing. Does that make any sense?
Good choice.
I love reading, but I think with regard to reading, being an MP, you've got that much to read just to keep up to speed with things. I read 9 papers every morning. Really important that you keep up to speed, and then you've got your political papers. A lot of newspapers, I read them, and then you've got your daily stuff, and you've got your weekly stuff, and you've got your casework, and you've got all of that. So you do a lot of reading. So in order to relax, it's not always my favourite thing to sit and read, but I do like TikTok. I love scrolling on TikTok.
That's so funny. And two left.
You know what? I know I'm interrupting you, but you know what worries me about the likes of TikTok is the algorithms, right? And my expertise on this is absolutely spot on. I bought a pair of boots off TikTok, safety boots, right? And I still get it here, for the next 6 weeks, the algorithm pushed me onto every single different type of safety boot in the world. If anybody needs anything about safety boots, I'm your man. The obvious point is algorithms, what they can do to your mind and what they can do to young people is so frightening. But definitely. Safety boots, I'm your man.
I've got another question here. What does the perfect fun day to you look like?
The perfect fun day for me is
watching Newcastle.
I love match days. I love watching sport. I like football. I like cricket. I like horse racing. I like greyhound racing. Normally, I'm a season ticket holder. I have been for 30 odd years in Newcastle. But you know what I like doing now? I like sitting in the garden, like what I did on Saturday. It was hot. You can tell by my face, I'm singed. And I like did a little bit of gardening, and I've got a right big garden. And then I sat and I just decided with my wife, she had a glass of wine, and I opened the working man's champagne, Stella Artois, and I just had like a good few cans of freezing cold Stella, sitting in the deck chair in my garden, nobody answering us, and just basically having probably one too many, or maybe two too many, but I really enjoyed it. But I like to just sit, because the family, like being an MP and being an activist all my life, my family's got to put up with a lot of, like a lot because of me, and it's nice just to sit and relax, particularly, with my wife, and have a good crack and a few drinks and the world are right.
Love it. We love that. So the last question we have from the team is, what is your biggest source of motivation on hard days?
Understanding where I come from, understanding the struggles that other people have got, and understanding how lucky I actually am. I've got some money in the bank, I'm an MP. I haven't got any worries about paying me rent. When people say it's a stressful job, tell you what's stressful, not being able to put food on the table for your parents. Tell you what's stressful, going to the food bank and having to open a can of food in the background. Tell you what's stressful. Women, in the main single women, for example, who can't afford to eat themselves, or they cannot afford to eat in both, feed the kids and feed themselves, so they're being without for days on end. That's stressful. The motivation for me is understanding how lucky I've been in life, despite all the challenges. Understanding that I got like a leg up, and I've done all right. But now there's lots of people out there suffering, and my motivation is I need to be wherever I can to try and give them the same sort of opportunities I had, and look after them wherever I possibly can. And that is a huge motivation. Looking after others, trying to help others, because a lot of people in a very difficult place in this moment time. That makes sense.
Thank you for saying that. We agree. We agree with that. Ian, if it's okay, I've got one last question. Who would be proud of you, and what would they say about your lifetime of achievements, from being the president of the National Union of Mineworkers to being an MP and serving your community? Who would be proud of you, and what would they say about you?
Well, you know who I'm going to say to me.
Are you going to say your mum and dad?
I am.
I love that.
They would be terribly proud.
Would be
terribly proud. absolutely. They would be proud of all my brothers, regardless, but they would be extra proud if what I've achieved. I don't think when we grew up where we grew up, with difficult times and challenges, that they would ever have thought that one of their kids was going to be, chairman of the Labour Party, member of Parliament, shadow cabinet member. I've got to say, one of the proudest moments of my life wasn't any of them. It was becoming a representative at the pit where I worked at a young age, being voted on by the men at the pit to look after them. And I mentioned before with the compensation, very difficult, very complex job, very rewarding in many ways, but desperate in others. That was like probably for me the most important job, and the one that I take great pride in, looking after the people at the pit who had suffered through ill health, through accidents, and some of them who have been killed.
I can't help but think you're right in saying your mum and dad would be proud of you, and your humanity really shines through. I'm sure the team agree with that. So we're very grateful for you to have joined us on our podcast. Everyone, Ian Lavery, MP. Thanks for listening to the Money Made Human podcast. We're grateful to spend time with you and hope you enjoyed it. If you want to join a credit union, choose us. With love, until the next time, First Class Credit Union.